didn't pay it. These days, obviously, gifting campaigns, what you'd refer to it as. And it worked well. Some creators would sell a couple of grand of bars in a weekend, and then others, no, crickets. And we didn't know how we could have that information pre-campaign to work on our selection, and then know who we're going to choose, and then know what that outcome could be. So we looked at the market for platforms, and there wasn't really anything out there. So we, like everybody, just have a problem and you want to create a solution. So we did, and I'll get into the product a little bit later in terms of the Kitely Business product and how we use that now to verify influencers for campaigns. And it is a SaaS platform for brands, agencies, and talent agencies. So they use it to verify their talent accounts to brands and marketers for campaigns. So I'll touch on that in a sec, but let's start with different kinds of creators. So why would you use influence marketing, and what would you hope to get out of it? It really depends on your goals. Is it a new product and you're looking at top of the funnel kind of stuff, just awareness? Obviously, as we know, funnels, consideration, and then sales at the bottom there. So, and what kind of ROI you could expect. But if we look at that, we really simply just break it down to three. And there is obviously crossover between the three. Obviously, if you look at Cristiano, affiliation endorsement, you just put his name against something and that's got a bit of power behind it. But obviously he's going to cross over into social publishing and the organic ad space that is his account. So there is crossover there, but I wouldn't say he's a content creator. We'd probably say he's got a team behind him that's going to do that for him. And the same if we look at Zach King, amazing content creator, huge audience on TikTok, like the really cool content that he can create. But again, I wouldn't really use him for affiliation endorsement because he doesn't have that public stance, that public profile. And then Jack, everybody knows from Maths. We're all honest if we watch it. I do. And he was on Maths. Now he's got a podcast with just under 250,000 followers. So very different categories of influencers or creators or whatever you want to call them. But we'll start by going into the content creation side of things. So why would you use them? Obviously to create engaging content for your brand to be repurposed off-channel. Ways you can verify them as well is obviously their ability to create the content, their ability to follow a brief, and then brand safety. So very basic things there. Looking at the kind of content creation though is quite interesting, and that's evolved quite a bit over time. I think the first real content creation platform that popped up was Tribe back in the day, around kind of probably 2017, 2018. And it was very much just bringing those brands and the creators together to create content. And then it was obviously a marketplace. It still is. But that's evolved now. And as you can see, that was a UGC, so user-generated content platform. That's generated now into CGC and EGC. So employee-generated content, which is important on platforms such as LinkedIn. What are they going to be doing for your company that is not contracted, but just straight off the bat, showing their affinity with your brand, who they work for. They're not a customer, but still very important for culture. And then customer or consumer-generated content. So what are your customers sharing because they love your product? Generally things you don't pay for, but they may be looking for some sort of paid gig with you. A lot of these guys who do create this content are just tagging your brand and getting eyes on, or your eyes on their content, promoting your product, hoping for some sort of paid gig or long-term gifting campaign perhaps. But nonetheless, the content is still quite powerful as endorsement of your product and really a video testimonial that you can use off platform too. So quite interesting to see the way that content creation as just a pure creator has evolved over time. And obviously AI is going to play a huge change in this and huge impact. Affiliation endorsement, very much the same. The public status within or across multiple industries. Pretty basic stuff there. And what do you verify with them? Brand safety, content licensing. Can you put Cristiano's face with your nappies on this billboard? Probably not. I don't know. But will he agree to it? It's probably going to have to be licensed and contracted. And then again, contracting. But where we play is the social publishing space. So understanding how many eyeballs are going to be on the content that you're going to pay for, or the ad space that you're going to pay for. And through the years, the biggest feedback that we've received from brands in not wanting to really dabble too much in influencer marketing or just dip the toe in the water at times was the lack of transparency in what they're actually paying for. If we go to men's health or women's health, which we experienced back when I had torsion bars, it was, I go to buy a page or half a page, and their guys would send me a rate card and a media kit, and it would show me their circulation, their viewability, their readership, the audience, everything, all the details that I can build that top of the funnel number. And then I can build that out to understand what the likely outcome could be at the bottom. You don't get that, or you didn't get that back in 2016. So everything was, yeah, your content's kind of cool, yeah, it kind of aligns, yeah, here you go, just have the product, and we'll see what happens. Very different now. So social publishing, we want to verify their reach. Follower numbers are great, it's a lot of bullshit. We know that, you can purchase it. You can purchase engagement as well, you can purchase anything. So we want to verify the reach, the impression, the engagement. Ultimately, whatever you're going to pay for that audience. And then same, their accounts, audience, demographics, the followers in the country you sell the product, very basic stuff. And then again, brand safety. We worked with an agency for a tag campaign, launching a new tag golf watch a couple of years ago now. But it was quite interesting because they got the final stage about the contract, and then they saw that in an article 6 years ago, this guy said that women don't belong on the golf course. So they're like, oh, we better wind that back a little bit. So it's really interesting to see that who you align with, if they've got the reach, if the content's great, then you really have to dig a little bit deeper to find out who exactly you're going to work with there from a brand safety point of view. So how do we look at the stats and how do we verify the stats and exactly what are we going to buy and overly what's important? There's a few different kinds of data. Without getting too deep, you've got your first, second, third. First party is obviously from the source. These days you can have access to Facebook developers and pull through directly from Meta, TikTok, YouTube APIs. It's a bit of a long-winded process, especially with Meta. You have to build the platform first for them to review, and then they'll give you access, maybe. And they might cut it off in 6 months' time. So it's a bit of a pain to work with, but it's still, that's the holy grail of the data. The best way to verify it is story data. So if you're using a platform and they say it's first-party data, but they don't have access to story data for Instagram or Facebook, then that's a pretty good telltale sign that they're buying that data from a third party, such as this one. This is third-party data. It's varied in its accuracy. It doesn't always come from the source that it says that it does. A lot of the time we see it's actually Twitter data, and it's represented as multiple other platforms, especially TikTok. When TikTok first came out, there was no access to their APIs or any of their data. A lot of people would scrape it, but they already had access to, say, Jack's Instagram account, but they already had data from from Twitter. Then they would pull across into his Instagram, and then just put a TikTok badge on it. And really, you didn't even know the difference. But here we look at the data, and it's media uploads, followers, following, engagement rate, average likes, average comments across the top line. Great, but obviously understanding where that comes from. And a lot of the time, if we look at Instagram specifically here, the engagement rate and the average likes and average comments has been pulled together to represent the platform. But we know you've got Reels, Grid, and Stories. 3 very different media types and media formats across the one platform that obviously they don't really represent. It could be an holistic view, but still it doesn't show you, if you engage Jack, if you're paying 10 grand for a reel, what's the outcome going to be? So the data is very important to understand where it comes from, but what metrics matter. And again, following rank of 2.9 millionth in the world, really cares. So what we do is we focus on a little bit deeper. So Jack's account up the top there, account information. We've got a reel over here on the right, which we'll go through, and then we've got Connor's down the bottom. So the content's very different, but in the green box, or the little aqua box, we start with their followers. It's always a good point to start. So 248,000 for Jack, and Connor, 375,000. If you look at the media types in the purple box, that's the reach of his 3 media formats. That's what you need to look at once you get past the followers. That's ultimately what you're going to pay with. And as you can tell, pay for. And as you can tell, they're very, very different between the two. So just going off the follower number, you have no idea once you open up that box what's going to be there. Varies for verticals, varies for genders. It varies on the posts that they, the quantity of posts they do and the frequency as well. So it's quite interesting to see. We get that number to around 90% accurate at the moment. That's what we've really been working on over the last 4 or 5 years. The reason being is because once you go through, you understand the data, and you start to build out your campaign inclusion, who you're going to work with, all the talent, put them into the product, and then you're going to have an outcome, what that prediction is going to be. So what will our reach be if we work with 10 creators across their Reels, Stories, TikTok, the works? The platform will tell you. So it's quite interesting to see that, as you'd expect, 375,000 followers, but a story reach of less than 5,000. The amount of brands that we onboard their ambassadors for, and they have this magical number of reach in the millions, this huge number, and then once we boil it all down, 50,000. So, okay, that's very different. And generally, the marketing team has to have some pretty hard conversations with the finance team because they're the ones obviously going to fund it, and the outcome that was promised is nowhere near 10% of that. So understanding the data is really important because once you do the campaign, the outcome's going to be there anyway. So you may as well know up front what you're going to pay for. On the right, this is the kind of data that you can pull through from the API, reach, plays, all the interactions, shares, click-throughs, all those different data points that really show success of that piece of media. So once you understand the data, what we do is we allow our users to essentially find more. So they understand what data is meaningful, and then they can get into actually sourcing the creators themselves. And we do this in 3 different columns: the creator, the audience, and the content. What kind of creator is going to align with your brand? Are your products primarily for females or males? The audience, what country do you sell the product? Where do you want it? Where do you want to increase sales to the audience? And then the content. Do you want to use video? Is your product best pitched in a video? Obviously, Reels and Stories are for you, Grid not so much. So understanding what kind of reach and engagement is going to be achieved across those media formats for these individuals is really key. Once we filter it, then we'll get the result, and we can start to build out that long list of talent, start the contracting phase, and then go through that brand safety checklist and everything else that you would when aligning your brand with a creator. So getting to the management side, this is what it would look like if you were managing it on Kitely Business. We've added our creators on the left, and the creator is referred to as the profile. And then next to that is the social account. As we know, many people have more than one social account. So we really want to differentiate those, and not all deliverables for a campaign will be social based. It could be an event, launching the product, it could be a photo shoot, it could be anything. So we just want to make sure that everything's captured here, so you have a full picture of the people you're working with and what you expect them to do, and ultimately what you're going to pay them to do, whether it's your product or cash. In the green box is what our predictive engine does. So that pulls together the performance of those accounts that you've penciled deliverables for, which is the 4th column from the left. And that's going to pull through the performance of those social accounts at this point in time. And we check that by looking at, say, grids over the last 100 posts. So over the last 100 posts, removing any outliers such as birthdays, engagements, babies being born, all those kinds of things that just boost the engagement, throw everything out. That's the outcome that we get, and that's what we get to about 9. I don't know if this is gonna, yeah. So we'll play, you can download it, understand everything that the creator's been posting for that period of time. Generally, these, from a brand's point of view, will be ambassadors that have monthly obligations of posting. So they'll do a monthly report to pull through the performance and the engagement of those creators' content for that month. But what we see here is essentially the performance of that month in the black. So plays at 55,000, and this is for the November period, so ending November 30th. And it's interesting to see in the green what's been achieved since then. So it's been a 500% uptick in the plays, which would obviously be the impressions if you're looking at still media, which is huge. So you've got your cost per impression moving from 17 cents to 2. So that conversation that you had initially with your finance team, going back and saying, oh, hey, it's gone down to 2 cents. It's probably going to be a better conversation. So it's really interesting to see the brand uplift that is normally never tracked. People will report for a period of time, and generally that's the period of time that's contracted and paid for. But the media is still living on the platform. It's still gaining traction. It's doing everything that it was doing inside that campaign period, outside of it, and until the media is deleted. So your cost per click, cost per impression is continually going to be going down. So really important. And the same across TikTok. So it's not just isolated to Instagram. It's the same for TikTok. So 6.3 million plays, but from the end of the campaign, it's had another 7.5 million, which is huge. Generally, never reported on. The current reporting standards for these kind of metrics are screenshots from the back of the Instagram app, shared to the talent agency or the marketing agency to then compile into a PDF to share with the brand. That's obviously going to be a snapshot of a point in time where these are just completely missed. So if you're working in a marketing agency or you are doing socials for a brand, or your clients would look at these numbers in black and say, yep, that's great for success. Obviously going back to them in 3 months' time, saying, hey, we've doubled that and it didn't cost you a cent, is a pretty powerful conversation. That's pretty much it. So I wanted to leave a bit of time because obviously, as I said, there's quite a bit in there, but I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole or anything. But any questions to start? Yep.
I saw something about tracking links, but I think it probably doesn't relate to this. But can you set goals and how those goals are tracking? Yeah, with this.
Yeah, this one. So yeah, the tracking links or the clicks down here. So this is just giving a view of the campaign running. So yeah, you can set your budget. You set your goals within the campaign creation, and then that'll show in the tab next to talent, the in-flight media. So you can set this campaign to be from today's date to 2 months' time. And as the deliverables that are set for the future begin to post on the platform, the system will grab it, pull it in, show you in-flight tracking, updating every hour of every day. So you can see the performance climb of the media, but then obviously boost if you need to, which is important. You don't want to boost right at the beginning if you're going to grow quite organically anyway and save a bit of money. So yeah, you can track the goals against the outcome as well. In the in-flight media as well, it'll show you the predicted outcome and then what's been reached and the difference. So you can see if you're on track to achieve it as well.
Yeah. With influencer marketing growing so much lately, you know how there's a lot of third-party groups that you can go buy followers from now.
Yeah.
Does Kitely have a way to verify what are real followers and what's not, or is that something that you would just decipher from the engagement rates?
Yeah, engagement rates and the reach. So early days, it's a good question because it still comes up a lot. We did it back in 2018, 2019 when the buzzword was influencer fraud. Everything was about influencer fraud. And we were taking a deep dive into the difference between the reach. Reels didn't exist then. We just had grid and stories. And the reach differences between those two media formats and the followers, and why they're different. And looking at if we buy followers, how does that impact our follower number, but also our reach? So it's really interesting. It's a good question because you've got the followers that will come into the account that you purchase are just that. They're just followers. They don't look at the media, so it's different. So we ran a bunch of different tests, creating fake accounts, buying heaps of bots, did it all on Buzzoid, on all these different platforms. And we found that the reach actually isn't impacted at all. So rather than going into the weeds a little bit on that reach number and then how many are dormant accounts, how much was my mum's Instagram that she created 3 years ago that doesn't use anymore, followed a bunch of people. So old dormant accounts versus fake accounts versus people who just don't use it. So that's what we wanted to move away from and just show that's what you'll reach. That's the one number that will be meaningful to an outcome. So that's what we really stuck with. To your point around purchasing followers, you can also purchase engagement, which is really interesting. Down the bottom here, we've got obviously total interaction percentage and total interactions. Now, as you can see here, the reach is 19,580, and the play's been more than that. So people have played that video more than once. Some people have, not a lot. But you can see that the total interactions being 359. When you look at purchasing engagement, the engagement will be added to the media. Generally, likes is the most common because comments, you can get comments and they're generally emojis or very obvious comments. But because they are obvious, a lot of people will just go for likes. But generally, that'll be added in the first 90 seconds of that media being posted. So media will go up. Your subscription service that you've used to pay for this engagement will be added. And usually that time, the reach isn't that high. So the reach is slowly creeping up. Obviously, the amount of media going onto these platforms is huge. It goes in a bit of a holding pattern. It gets engaged with early, then it gets pushed out to more people, and that's how you obviously gain those reach and impressions. But more often than not, you'll see in a lot of testing that we found anyway, was that the interactions or the engagement you've purchased would be higher than the reach. So people have engaged with it, but no one's seen it yet. So it was really interesting. And then we just put a little red flag on it to say, hey, I might want to look at that. There's something there. So it's quite interesting. It still happens now. And early days when we first, there was actually a really interesting campaign for Woolworths that we saw where it was targeting actually children's products. So working with a bunch of mums, and we were looking at one account specifically because there was some weird behavior on it, and she grew by 100,000 followers overnight. And we're just like, come on, at least do it in like stages. Like, it was really surprising, and that's what got us into how do you buy the engagement, how do you buy the followers? Because back then that was the currency. If I'm going to get an extra $5 grand because I'm going to spend $50 on purchasing followers, why not? But what we found is that when purchasing, you don't have to prove that you own the account. So we saw this sabotage because people were being blacklisted on platforms because their algorithms would pick up these spikes and then take them out of the marketplace. So for me, with my competitors, I'll spend $50 on buying them more followers. They'll be completely removed out of this marketplace for me. And I'll sit there and everybody will be like, let's work with him. So really interesting to see that you can buy followers for people you don't know. Yeah, crazy. And engagement. So that's why we didn't want to red flag too much or say you have bought followers because you don't know.
You guys are manually kind of keeping an eye on it and red flagging? Or is there like an automatic algorithm if there's...
It's automated. Yeah, it's automated for the interactions, for the engagement. And then any spikes and anything, we just open it up to them. So we teach them, a lot of it's education, because they may not have posted, and we saw people that were going on the Today Show and their engagement and impressions were boosting, but it had nothing to do with their socials, which makes sense. Yeah.
What's the commercial model and how are these campaigns charged? I can see so many different options.
Oh, that's $1 million question, isn't it? Yeah, and that's the really interesting thing, because if we go back to the types of creators, each one has, so the affiliation endorsement, how do you charge for that? Social publishing a little bit easier because there's a lot of historical methods of doing that. Digital media, print media, we can bring that across.
CPM rate or something?
Yeah, to an extent. And then if these guys have their individual, so Jack was on that. He kind of comes into a little bit of like his public profile. What is that worth? If we look at a good example with the Olympics coming up, athletes in the Olympics, they're relevant and they're current. So we look at their relevancy to the brand and then their currency right now. 2024 Olympics coming up, they're going to be current, so they're going to be in the media a little bit more. But is their relevancy to the brand aligned, or is it not really? Are you looking for a vegan athlete and you've got a vegan protein? Amazing, brilliant, bring it together. And they're going to be relevant now because they're in the lead up to the Olympics. It's going to be pretty good. But it's still the $1 million question, and everybody does it differently. Platforms will do it differently. A lot of platforms that we see in terms of marketplaces, it is a bit of a race to the bottom as well, which is the trouble with marketplaces. But again, people like Zach can charge whatever he wants because everybody wants him to create content. So then it just comes down to, hey, I've got 30 spaces in the next 3 months. And I want to make X amount of money, I'll just divide that by 30. That's what I'm going to charge. If that's 10 times your budget, sorry. So it is really interesting to see how it's calculated, and there is a bit of lack of consistency within the market. I sit on the Influencer Marketing Council, and it's something that always comes up on both buy and sell side, trying to align sell side in a way or a strategy in how they can pitch their talent that aligns with the buy side and something that they're going to be able to understand and get approval for, comes up every month.
So in terms of the social publishing side then, I mean, how economical does it work out for the average brand versus, just traditional display advertising or, any other digital advertising?
Yeah, I would say on par, if not better. And again, it depends on the publication. But we just did a bit of a case study with the Sun out of the UK, and it was really interesting because if you look at, say, Jack here selling his social ad space to his 250,000 followers, the Sun's no different. It's just that it's owned by News Corp. But if we look at the Sun and their socials, they don't really commercialize the organic side. And it was interesting in this meeting, but it's like, why don't you? It's like, usually we'll just use it for lead gen into our digital articles and things like that. But when we connected the platform, we started getting some errors, and we're like, what's this? It's like they post 300 times a day on Facebook. And we're like, that's huge. These guys might post twice or 3 times. So the numbers were huge. But when we pulled back all their impressions, they were getting more hits than the Super Bowl. But no one's paying them $50 million for an ad. So it was really interesting if you went to the Sun and said, hey, I want to put this product on there for a video for a reel or something like that, compared to something like the Super Bowl, $50 million, they'd probably do it for free if you bought a space on their digital platforms. So it's really interesting, but I think it really depends on the platform you want to put it on, and then the account, because as much as you do have these instances where it could work phenomenally, you will get others where it will just fail as well. So it really depends, and that comes down to posting time as well. On each account, we'll look at every hour of every day, see when those followers are online, and it's quite interesting to see that there's always a peak. So if you post here, engagement kicks up as it goes into the ether and then gets pushed out to more audiences. Yeah.
And a question on the post-campaign reporting data that you showed. Are you able to kind of look at that over, say, an average period of time? Obviously, you're paying, say, a Jack for campaign A to run for a period of time. There is a sale.
Yep.
Engagement cost that. To get a view of, well, if it's going to cost you X, we know historically, on average, you'll receive Y post the campaign period, which then means you can factor into the cost that you're paying. Yep. So can you look at that sort of on an average per, say, influencer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you absolutely could. We haven't done that. You absolutely could. The data's there. And I think it'd be really interesting to do it per vertical as well, to see what the uplift could be.
So it's justify that initial investment, right?
Yeah.
Knowing you're going to get a longer tail.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially if in the contract that it doesn't say that the influencer will delete the piece of media. Sometimes they will say, look, I'll do it because I want the money, but I don't really align with your brand, but I'll delete the media afterwards. That happens quite a bit. But yeah, you absolutely could. It's a good way of thinking about it, especially with such a drastic change. It's huge. Yeah.
Thanks, Ant. Really great presentation. I'm just wondering, with the Kitely business, do you offer a service or a package to help founders to understand and navigate this space and understand what's best for their brand?
We don't, but we should. It's popped up in a little bit. Popped up over the last couple of years, actually. So it's normally, it really doesn't matter what his followers are like unless he's going to post it. So there are other platforms like that. That's really helpful. Talent is one. They're great. And then the affiliation endorsement, that's more, it's a hard one because there's no real metrics associated with it yet. To your point, like it's very difficult to put those into a box and put them into a matrix and say, you are here and that's what you need to charge. So it's quite interesting to see that one is always a negotiation. And with talent agencies being professional negotiators, yeah, they're fun. So, but yeah, we just really play in the middle. But usually there's crossover between it. So generally, if it's affiliation or content creation, there'll be an element of those people posting the content on their own channels anyway, and that's where we'll come in.
I guess to extend on that question, if you had a startup and you're looking to make a hire or appoint an agency to run your influencer marketing, what are the skills or characteristics you would say to look for? I mean, there seems to be a real art and a real science here.
100%, yeah. Everything is very qual and quant if you look at it from the execution point of view. Make sure they consider both elements of that. For me, I would ask, what technology do they use? That's number one. Obviously,
Let's say they said Kitely.
Oh, then, yeah, amazing. Yeah, definitely hire them. They're great. No, I would definitely look at the processes in contracting. Obviously, going into bat with professional negotiators, they want to be able to be pretty confident that they can get rates for you, and they're going to be lower or on par with what they should be, because that's, as I said, there's no real framework for that. So it's very much what they're going to throw that initial dart on the board to be, and then you trying to move that around. So making sure they're good and confident at that as a skill. And then I look at their probably track record, definitely. From this, we look at the quantitative view. We look at what you could achieve. A lot of this is achieved by the qualitative. So looking at what kind of content you're creating, and looking at what content has worked previously, aligning that, which we do look at in the platform as well. We've got a section there where we look at the top performing 12 pieces of content and then the bottom 12. And in verticals like fashion and beauty, generally there will be a crossover between one social account. So their ability to manage the creative brief based on their insights is really important, because when looking at fashion and beauty, generally there will be one who will stand out in the highest performing 12. Whether it's fashion or beauty, there will be an affinity with that audience that will align to one of those. So yeah, making sure that, I guess, that the tech they use, their ability to negotiate, and then absolutely the ability to run the creative brief based on what they can see of past performance of those accounts. Yeah, that'd be key. For sure. Thanks. Yeah.
Just broadly with the industry, it feels like there's like an extra zero being added on to the amount that you can spend on this sort of thing.
Yep.
Over the last few years. What do you see is there a place still for the micro influencers and maybe spreading your spend across a broader cross section of micro influencers compared to, you know, spending big with a bigger influencer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think the difference there, if you look at it from a scale, I guess, and looking at micros and mass micros, and then going to taking that budget into one or two, you would want those one or two to have some pretty decent endorsement power behind them for the industry that you want to obviously promote that product in.
I guess sometimes the management of a whole stack of micros who don't really know what they're doing also takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Compared to people who know what they're doing and who've, you know, got a lot of it set up.
Working
with
the
agents
management
and
side's
representing them.
difficult, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create something like this, because some accounts on here have 600 ambassadors, and every month they need to post. So they need to make sure the performance is as expected, but also make sure that those 600 met their obligations. So you're not going to go through and check everyone's Instagram account. So we have a filter on there as well. But from
So is that a service? Is that something that Kitely does provide for that?
Yes, we'll provide a media timeline based on the contracted pieces of media for each account or each profile, and then we'll show you when they post, and it'll show you what's complete and what's incomplete, so you can have a quick glance at it. But I think from a value point of view, over the years we've definitely seen value in the micros for sure. A few years ago it was very much a buzzword, like influencer fraud was, but it's moved away a little bit, but I think the power's still there. I think you've got these niche individuals with very authentic content. I think from the micros being up to, say, 10,000 followers, obviously, as we know, reach, you don't know what you're going to get from that 10,000 number. You might be getting more. You might be reaching 20,000. So it does go both ways. It's not always less than the followers. But it's really interesting to see that a lot of these micros do have still a lot of pull within the small network.
And they're often hungry.
Yeah, always hungry. Absolutely. Yeah. So there is arguments for both. I think it probably just comes down to the value of the product as well. If you want to spend like say products, 5-10 grand, something like that, you want to, or it's $50 you can give it to a lot more for $50 than what you could for $5-10 grand. If it is purely just gifting.
So sorry, just to clarify on that, with Kitely, do you pull in just people who have registered with Kitely? And do you target certain size accounts to be within your platform?
No, so we do, where is it? This one. So we use a third party to pull through scrape data, and because that's important to a campaign creating that long list, you're using these 3 filters to give you an idea around who you could work with. And once you find them, then you can request them to authenticate to provide the first party data. So then you can look at a bit of their content, make sure they align kind of from a qual point of view, and then authenticate their accounts, and they'll just give it a prompt. They can authenticate, first party data will come through, and then you will see all the stats like this. Yeah, so it's about 300 million accounts in their overall database. And then specifically for Australia, we have about 60% of the talent agency market, and they're all found in this little modal that's opened here, search authenticated, managed, and independent creators. So if you click on that tab, that'll just bring through everybody who's already authenticated. There's about 18,000 in there for Australia specifically.
And do you provide any tools to assist with that whole outreach to the creators?
No, we and it's interesting because we're kind of at that stage of our journey at the moment where if we do, how much do we manage and do we become a marketplace? So we're kind of toying with that at the moment. In terms of the outreach, there is a little button there, the one on the right above View Analytics, and that's contact. So you can contact the creator. Sometimes their details will be there, sometimes not. It depends if you've pulled them through the authenticated tab or you're just searching the publicly available information. Generally publicly available, they're few and far between, having accurate ones anyway, which is just a problem for the industry, trying to find 100 creators for a campaign to go live next week, really difficult. Searching the authenticated managed, they've opted into the platform, they're using the platform, the details are up to date. If they're managed, it's going to go through to their agent, and their agent will keep that up to date. So you know that you don't have to worry about any of those conversations about accessing data and things like that.
So, does your platform manage those campaigns? Like, can you?
No, we just provide
can
the
you see the
software.
reporting through your platform? Sorry, do you have a reporting tool or something?
Yeah, so the reporting was that the link that I
Okay.
swiped up from. Yeah.
So in Kirsty's example, if you're going for the micro level under 10,000 and you have, I don't know, a group of them instead of just getting 2 or 3, is that something that your platform is gonna make it easier for someone to see the whole?
Yeah, absolutely. For the for generally larger scale campaigns, so this one here has 24 talent on 34 pieces of media posted. You can deselect any talent. You can rank them, reach, number of posts, and then that'll change the data down the bottom. But in terms of the onboarding process, if you are doing it for a brand, things like that, onboarding through to managing through to reporting, it's time consuming. So we'll create a custom landing page for you with a unique URL to send out to those talent. They'll onboard through that process. This will update, so then we can see specifically for those, say 600, who's achieved what, the media that was posted, and when it was posted as well.
So you guys basically do the help help identify which is the right talent to use and then report on it essentially, right?
Yeah, that's
So
right.
not involved in the commercial side of it in between.
We keep that separate. Yeah. We did, our first interaction actually had contracting involved, but it was, everybody was still finding their feet with it. It was really interesting working with small brands and agencies, kind of saying, look, we just need some sort of contract pulled together, and then working with News Corp, who set up an agency to run it. They had their team and obviously rules to roll through. So we kept that separate. We've got a place within here where they can add in those contracts and things just for management, like a CRM. No, we've got to try to stay clear of that.
Does the platform also allow like the Jetstars as well, the example you've got here, to input their costs, so what they negotiated and how much it's cost to them to get the returns?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there'll be a budget tool on there as well. And then in terms of the actual ROI and putting a cost against the performance, that's actually what we're building at the moment.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, the next thing we do is this the report, which I just took off the screen. It's a very analytical report, but what we want to focus on is actually celebrating the campaign, because people have gone through a lot of effort in creating this awesome content for your brand, which should be celebrated. So the reporting side needs to be as we have now. Then it also needs to be presentation. So we want to work on pulling that through with celebrating the media, but then also looking at the ROI and the stats in terms of what was actually spent. So we're just working with some tech to pull that through now, which is cool. I think it's quite exciting. The main issue that we have that we actually solved for Jetstar was that the authentication that's required with the platforms to access the first-party data is very closely guarded. If we look at the whole talent pool, we look at, I would say, close to 80% would be managed talent now. The rest being independent. They'll sign up to a bunch of different platforms because they're not making a lot of money. They'll just be hungry for everything. But we know that from the managed talent standpoint, they won't sign up to a bunch of platforms. When we started, we were one of 3 businesses globally that had access to Meta's APIs off the back of Cambridge Analytica. So it was really interesting to see the data that we were getting, but also how loose the industry was. Once we started to get some traction, now there's probably 3,000 platforms out there. Every brand has a different one, and everyone now has the ability to authenticate into first-party data. But the agents are the gatekeepers of their talent, and they're saying, no, we're not signing up to every single different campaign or every different platform for every different campaign. It's just not going to happen. So we'll send you a Kitely Business report, and that's your data. What we found at the moment and what Jetstar experienced was of their 28 ambassadors that they use every month was that they were receiving Kitely Business reports for 3 of them. The other 25, they were being sent screenshots, Excel spreadsheets, or PDFs. So the account manager at Jetstar sits down on a Friday, gets swamped with all these emails and attachments, and they're like, okay, shit, I've got to present this on Tuesday. Now I'm comparing all these different metrics that don't align into one presentation to then say, hey, this campaign went well, or they've met their obligations just because I've received screenshots. So it's really hard for them. So what we've done is opened up the platform to brands and agencies to access the talent, to manage their own internal accounts, plus their talent accounts if they do connect. But if they do have talent that don't want to connect, then the talent agencies can share the reports through Kitely Business, and they can just merge them all together to get a clear picture of the end of the campaign. That's always a problem. You pay $1,000 for a platform, and it's 80% accurate. You're missing 20, so it's useless. Yeah, so that's what we've really been focusing on for the last couple of months.
I'm just thinking for my own brand, and in terms of searching for the right kind of influencer, what would be really helpful is to understand their audience's work industry.
Yep.
I see you've got audience interest there and audience brand affiliates, and then also creator interest and creator brand affiliates. Is that probably the easiest way to see if that aligns to your brand, or
Yeah,
is
I
there
would say so.
an expansion? Like, can you match that data somehow?
I'd have to have a look. This is, because this is a third party, we get given essentially a big list of all the data points that we can pull through and we can filter the database with.
Okay.
This is only a small section that we've launched with. We just looked at what are the ones that everybody needs now, and then we can build out the rest. There are quite a few others, so I'll have a look on them and see if it's there. It's interesting, but with we're the same. We always play with security and usability. You can't have it secure and be really fun to use because it'll be a pain in the ass, and it goes the other way as well. You can't have it really nice and give you everything you want with zero security. Any more questions? We're going for time. That's not too bad. 53. Ghosts are coming in. Brilliant.
So just to change gears a bit, just from my understanding, probably the dinosaur in the room here, but so a lot of this is B2C. Have you seen application in B2B where influencer marketing works?
Say that another way.
Well, I guess a lot of this is about
Yep.
promoting brand,
Yes.
and particularly to consumer.
Yep.
So, us. Yep. But then I guess there's you got a whole lot of other areas around B2B. So selling more business-based products to a business business people or, trying to get into some, because these days, it's getting harder to communicate as well.
Yeah.
Have you seen that applied with sort of influencer?
Yeah, absolutely. And a good example would be actually a friend of mine. His product is Chief Nutrition, essentially protein bars, and he hates me explaining it this way. Imagine a muesli bar but meat. It doesn't make sense, but that's the best way to explain it. They use it by targeting people who go to other say like Chemist Warehouse, ASN, Nutrition Warehouse. These are all their B2B customers, but the ones that are on their hit list. So we'll target the same users or their ambassadors with the product, and then align those ambassadors with their potential hit list from a B2B side and gift them the product. So then they say it's a Nutrition Warehouse account. They've got all their ambassadors on there, but they're starting to see them post about this other product. They're using it. It's the same audience, the same market that we have for our products. And it's this little kind of in that they're getting to get the product indirectly in front of the brand side to be considered. Because as they send that email through and be like, oh, hey, we're Chief, we want you to be a wholesaler of ours. They're like, oh, I've seen this. All of our ambassadors are using it. So it's interesting to see how they've used things like the brand affinities or keyword searches to find those ambassadors for the potential lead from a B2B side. Yeah, quite clever.
Any other questions for Ant? Ant, thanks a million. That was really great.